I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here we are. My name's Dave, and I've been married to Lisa for about 5 years now. When we first got together, everything was pretty great. She was gorgeous, smart, funny, everything I thought I wanted. But over the last few months, things started to feel different. She'd be a little more dismissive, more bitchy even, snapping at me for no reason. Small things, but enough to make me question if I was missing something. The first real sign that something was off was when she started spending a lot more time on her phone. She'd go quiet when she was texting. I'd catch her hiding the screen. She'd get defensive if I asked who she was talking to. I didn't push it at first, but I felt this gnawing suspicion that there was something she wasn't telling me. Then came the weekend of the intensive marriage counseling. We signed up for a weekend workshop, mainly because I thought maybe we could fix what was going wrong. I thought it would be good for us, you know. It was supposed to be a safe space, a way for us to open up and figure things out. But I had no idea that in that very same weekend, Lisa would be doing something I'd never expect. The first clue that something was really wrong was when I noticed her phone was missing from the hotel room. She always kept it on the nightstand, but that Saturday morning, it wasn't there. I figured maybe she'd taken it to the bathroom or something. I didn't think much of it until I saw a message pop up on her iPad that she'd left on the desk. It was from some guy named Mark, sent late Friday night, right around the time I was sleeping. It just said, "Can't wait to see you later, tonight's gonna be unforgettable." My stomach dropped. I stared at it, trying to process what I just read. I mean, what the hell, I thought she was upstairs with the therapist. I looked at the timestamp. It was less than an hour after I'd fallen asleep. I felt this cold dread come over me. How long had this been going on? Was she sleeping around? And if so, how many other guys? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was mounting. And the worst part, she was right there in the same hotel, acting like nothing was wrong. I was furious, confused, feeling like my world was crumbling. I wanted to confront her then and there, but I also knew I had to be careful. This wasn't the kind of thing you yell at someone about in the heat of the moment. I needed a plan. I decided I'd wait until she was in a good mood and then ask her directly. But honestly, I felt like I was going to puke. Later that night, after the session was supposedly over, I found myself wandering the hotel corridor trying to get my head straight. I couldn't sleep because all I could think about was that message, Mark's stupid words, and the fact that my wife, had been hiding something so heavy. I felt betrayed but also helpless. I kept telling myself, maybe it's just a fling, maybe it's nothing serious. But deep down, I knew better. I could see it in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. Something was broken, and she didn't want to admit it. I decided I'd find out the truth, no matter. I slipped back into our room quietly, trying not to wake her. I grabbed her iPad, which she'd left charging on the desk. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, which wasn't easy because she'd set a passcode. But I knew her usual passwords: her birthday, our anniversary, her favorite word. I tried her birthday first. Nothing. Then I remembered she'd told me she'd changed it recently, so I guessed her favorite band's name. Nothing. Finally, I guessed her best friend's name, and boom, unlocked. I scrolled through her messages, trying to find any more evidence. At first, it was just the one from Mark, but then I saw a string of texts between them. Flirty, suggestive, really inappropriate. They talked about meeting up again after the workshop, sharing secret plans, and even talking about how good sex with her is. Sex with her, my wife. I read and reread those messages, feeling like I was punched in the gut. I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe I was overreacting, but the proof was right there. She wasn't just cheating, she was having an affair, right under my nose. I kept reading, feeling this mix of rage and heartbreak building inside. I knew I couldn't just storm into her and accuse her without a plan, but I was so angry I could barely breathe. I remembered her bitchy attitude all weekend, her dismissiveness, her coldness. Now I knew why. She'd been lying straight to my face. And the most messed up part, she'd been doing this during our marriage therapy, during the weekend we were supposed to save us. I closed her iPad slowly, trying to keep my composure. I sat down on the edge of the bed, clutching my head. The shock was almost unbearable. I'd always thought we had a good marriage, that we loved each other. Turns out I was just fooling myself. My wife, a woman I'd trusted, had been sneaking around, lying, cheating. And here I was, realizing that the woman I loved was out there, probably with him, probably laughing at me behind my back. The feeling of betrayal was so sharp it felt literal, like I'd been stabbed. I knew I couldn't pretend this wasn't happening anymore. I had to confront her. I had to hear her come clean, even if I already knew the answer. I waited until she fell asleep. Then I took a deep breath, got up quietly and looked at her face, so innocent, so unaware of what I knew. That's when I decided I wouldn't let her get away with this. I'd confront her in the morning, and whatever happened next, I was done being naive. I was done being the fool in this marriage. I was angry, hurt, betrayed, and I knew nothing would be the same after that night. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing, replaying everything I had learned. I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the fact that she was sneaking around with Mark, some guy she met at that stupid weekend therapy. I kept asking myself how I hadn't seen the signs earlier, how I'd missed the clues. But the truth was, I'd been blind, too trusting. And now all that trust had been shattered. She was still asleep when I got up. I decided I needed to face her. My stomach was in knots, but I knew I couldn't pretend everything was fine anymore. I went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, and practiced what I'd say. I wanted to be calm, collected, make her. See, I knew everything. But honestly, I was furious, and I didn't know if I could keep my cool. When I finally went back into the room, she was lying on her side, still half asleep. I sat on the edge of the bed, took a deep breath, and told her I knew about the messages. Her eyes flickered open, and for a second she looked surprised. Then that bitchy smirk curled on her lips, like she was already prepared for this moment. "Oh, Dave," she said, rolling her eyes. "You're overreacting. Maybe you're reading into things. You always jump to conclusions." That's her go-to line: lie, deny, minimize, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I pulled out her iPad and held it in front of her. "Really? Because I have the proof right here. The messages from Mark, the late-night plans, the talk about how good sex with you is. Tell me, Lisa, what the hell is going on?" She sat up, crossing her arms, and looked right at me with that nasty attitude. "You're making a big deal out of nothing, Dave," she said, voice dripping with contempt. "That's just some guy. We're not doing anything. We're just having a laugh, okay? It's all innocent. You're just paranoid because you're insecure." I could feel my blood boiling. I clenched my fists. "Innocent? You think I'm stupid? You've been lying to me for months. During our therapy sessions, you were sleeping with another man. How can you even sit there and deny it?" She huffed, standing up and packing around the room. "Look, Dave, I don't owe you explanations. I was stressed, okay? The marriage was boring, and Mark been there for me. It's not like I'm leaving you or anything. I just needed some excitement, and you weren't giving me that. Don't make me out to be the villain here." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut again. That's her usual talking point: blame me, minimize her actions. But I was done with her lies. I told her I wanted her to pack her stuff, that I was done pretending everything was fine. Her face twisted with anger. She spat. "You're being overdramatic. I'm not cheating on you. I just needed some fun. You're so damn insecure. If you give me a little space, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere." I stared at her, feeling this strange mix of rage and sadness flooding through me. How could she be so cold, so manipulative? I knew I had to get out of that room before I did something I'd regret. I told her to leave, that I never wanted to see her face again. Her eyes narrowed and she snarked, "Fine. You want a divorce? Good. I've got my own life to live, Dave, and I'll make sure you regret this." That's when everything really hit me. This wasn't just a fling or some stupid mistake. This was betrayal on a level I didn't think was possible. She'd lied to me, cheated on me during what was supposed to be a weekend about fixing us. And now she was dismissing everything, turning it around on me like I was the crazy one. I felt a terrible mix of heartbreak, anger, and disgust. I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I also knew I wasn't going to be her punching bag anymore. I had to find a way to deal with this, to reclaim whatever dignity I could. After she finally stormed out of the room, I just sat there for a few minutes, trying to collect myself. My mind was racing, thoughts bouncing everywhere. On one hand, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. On the other, I felt this strange sense of clarity. I knew I couldn't just let her walk all over me anymore. The betrayal was too deep and the damage was done. I had to figure out what to do next. I spent the rest of that day in a daze. I called my brother, Mike, and told him everything just to get it off my chest. His words helped a little, telling me I was better off without her and that I deserved someone who actually respected me. But honestly, knowing that didn't make the pain go away. I kept thinking about all the time we lost, all the trust she shattered, and that stupid, cruel game she played during our therapy weekend. I felt humiliated, angry, and so goddamn hurt. And then, late that night, I found myself staring at my phone, going over all the evidence I'd uncovered. That's when I remembered I'd seen some of her messages with Mark on her iPad. I felt this impulse, like I needed to see if there was more I'd missed. So I started digging through her social media, her emails, everything I could find. I even installed a tracking app on her phone just to see if she'd try to contact Mark again. Crazy, I know, but I was desperate for answers. The next morning, things got even worse. I woke up to a text from Lisa claiming she was just trying to find herself and that I was overreacting. She said she was sorry for hurting me, but I could tell it was just more lies. She was just trying to save face to make me doubt myself. That's when I decided I wasn't going to take her word for anything anymore. I was going to get real proof, the kind that couldn't be denied. So I contacted the marriage counselor from the weekend. I knew it was risky. Her ethics were questionable, to say the least. But I needed to know if Lisa had been lying during the sessions, or worse, if she was doing this with others. I got in touch with the licensing board and I told them everything. Her lying, her cheating, her inappropriate conduct during therapy. I wanted to see if there was any chance I could blow this thing wide open, maybe get some answers, or at least understand just how far her deception went. While I waited for some kind of response, I tried to sort through everything emotionally. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to forget the whole thing and pretend it never happened. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. Not after all I'd found out. I was angry, yes, but also just so sad. I'd loved her once. I thought we had something real. And now it felt like that was all gone, just erased by her lies and betrayal. I kept telling myself that I deserved better and that I'd be okay, even if that meant starting over alone. But honestly, I still felt like shit. I was hurt, disappointed, and questioning everything I'd ever believed about us. I kept replaying the moment I found the messages, the moment I realized I'd been played for a fool. That night, lying in bed, I made a silent vow. I'd find a way to get through this, to come out stronger. And someday, I'd look back at this nightmare and know I survived it. Few days passed and I was stuck in this weird limbo. My mind kept racing, swinging between fury and despair. I kept checking my phone, waiting for some kind of update from the licensing board or the therapist, but nothing came right away. Meanwhile, I was trying to act normal, go to work, hold it together, but inside I felt like I was unraveling. Every thought was about her, Mark, the lies. The betrayal cut so deep that I started questioning everything, even myself. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from the therapist I'd been seeing for a consultation about the licensing board. She told me that Lisa's behavior during the weekend therapy was under investigation. Apparently, multiple couples had reported her for unprofessional conduct, flirting, inappropriate touching, and even one claimed that she'd made sexual advances during a session. The board was aware, and they were reviewing her case. I felt this strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I wasn't imagining things, and anger because she'd been so reckless, risking her career, all for some stupid affair. That same day, I decided I'd had enough. I wanted to see her face to face, to confront her. One last time. I knew she was probably trying to spin her story, paint herself as a victim, but I didn't care. I needed clarity, even if it was just to hear her deny everything again. I drove to her apartment, my mind racing with what I'd say. I told myself I wasn't going to lose my cool, but I knew that was a lie. I was furious, so furious I was trembling. When she opened the door, her eyes flicked nervously. I looked at her, feeling the boiling anger inside me. I didn't waste time. I just told her I knew about her affair, about her lying during therapy, and about her reckless behavior. I told her I'd been lied to, manipulated, and betrayed. Her face twisted into a sneer and she spat. "You're just jealous because Mark doesn't want your sorry ass. You're pathetic, Dave, always were." That was the moment I realized how much she hated me. She didn't deny the affair, she just twisted it into some kind of game, I told her I was done. I was done pretending that we had some future. I wanted her out of my life because I couldn't stand to keep living in this lie. She laughed bitterly and told me she had other guys, that she'd moved on, that she was better off without me. I left her there with her bitter smile, my heart pounding. I knew I'd make some decision soon, but I also knew that the damage was done. We were finished. Her betrayal had broken whatever little trust I had left, and I felt like I was carrying a weight I couldn't shake. I promised myself I'd find a way to rebuild, without her, without the lies. This pain, I told myself, would pass. But right now, sitting in my car, I just felt emptier than I ever had before. The person I thought I knew was gone, and I was left with nothing but regret and a very real question. How do I pick up the pieces of a life shattered by someone I loved? In the days that followed, I threw myself into sorting out the mess Lisa left behind. I started by changing all my passwords, blocking her from my social media, and removing her from my phone. I couldn't stand the thought of her still having access to my life, my thoughts, my feelings. I also contacted a lawyer, figuring it was time to get legal advice about divorce, finances, and what she might try to do next. Honestly, the process was exhausting, but I knew I couldn't let her ruin me anymore. What hurt the most was the realization that the woman I married, the woman I trusted, had been a stranger all along. All those years I thought we were building something real, something lasting, turned out to be a house of cards. When I finally accepted that she'd chosen her affair over us, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with sorrow. I didn't think I'd ever forgive what she did, but I knew I had to move forward. Looking back, I learned a lot from this nightmare. I learned how fragile trust is, how easy it is to be deceived by someone you love. I learned that sometimes people are willing to betray everything just for a moment of selfishness or excitement. Most importantly, I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I can survive betrayal even if it leaves scars. Now I'm focusing on myself. I've started therapy, not just to heal from this, but to rebuild my sense of self. I'm reconnecting with friends, doing things I enjoy, and trying to find joy again after the storm. The pain will fade, I know that. And someday, I'll look back at this chapter as a hard but necessary lesson. To anyone out there going through something similar, I'll say this: trust your instincts, don't ignore the red flags, and remember that you deserve honesty and respect. If you find yourself betrayed, don't blame yourself. Sometimes people just aren't who they seem. It hurts, but you'll get through it. You just have to be willing to face the truth, no matter how ugly it is. Because in the end, your happiness and integrity are what matter most.